What's up, everyone? I'm Billy.
And I'm Amanda.
And we are
moving some goalposts. Week, what is this, 55?
55. You're coming off, if this was like a football season, you'd be coming off a big week per the comments and the Twitter engagement and the various message boards. So we'll see.
I have to say, I don't read the message boards. Like, the only time I've read message boards is when they've been, like, screenshotted and sent to me, which I just don't really do anymore, because if it's a certain message board, it's rarely nice. If it's other message boards, it's nice, but I don't need to spend my time reading message boards. So I haven't seen those, but you've sent me a couple of them, which have been fun.
It hasn't been that bad for you, even on TexAgs this week. I think some Aggies agreed with you on the rankings we did last week. Obviously, every Longhorn did. And so, let's see if you can keep the momentum going before your knee replacement. And you'll be back with us next week with a brand new knee. So it'll be...
brand new knee, probably some narcotics. Be a fun show.
That'll be a fun one. And we'll have SEC Mike on there. So between you, the narcotics, and SEC Mike, that should be a fun episode as we really dive in.
I might have to change locations. I'll probably be back on that sofa.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like my laptop propped up, because I just ordered this whole knee elevation like pillow thing, and I feel like I'm not going to be wanting to move from that spot for a while.
I feel like you're actually going to do the show drugged up, which could be quite entertaining for all of us. Maybe not for me.
I feel like I'll probably just be used to them at that point, though.
That's true.
I don't know. I've never had one this intense, and normally I don't need to be on them very long. But I will say, one of the knee surgeries I had was a microfracture, and that was one where they drill into your bone.
Yeah.
And I had to be on drugs for I did that 2 weeks before I transferred to UT. And that was a rough first semester. But I did get all A's that semester, so obviously something still works in my brain when I'm recovering and having to take medications.
You're more focused. Well, let's focus up on this, because we have fall camp has started, Amanda, and we're ready to go. I mean, it's here. I went out to practice Saturday. It was an open 2-hour session. After we record this here on a Monday, I'm going to go back across the street for another open practice. So all around Texas, all around the SEC, all around college football, it is football season. I was in Chicago last weekend, and I was so tempted. Had to get back because A&M's press conference and starting practice. But I was like, if I would have stayed one more day, I was either going to go to Bears training camp or even drive a couple hours and go watch the Lions training camp. It's just that time of year. And when you're up there, you were in Minnesota, I was in Chicago, fall. There's just these little hints of fall, not in the air per se, maybe in the evening. I think the day I was in Chicago, it was a high of like 78. So for us, fall was in the air, and I'm like, I am ready for football. And so it's really nice to be able to go watch my Aggies. You can go watch your Longhorns. I know the people covering it it's go time, and there's a lot to talk about. So where do you want to start?
Well, unfortunately, fall won't be in the air for a while.
No.
Back down here. I will say, returning from Minnesota I was like, I posted on Twitter too that like Minnesota is like elite, and people are like, nah, I'm just like griping in the comments. I'm like, you people have obviously never been to the state in the summer, because it is one of the most stunning places I have been. Like, flowers are blooming, birds are chirping, things aren't dead. Highs like in the mid 80s. Like, it was kind of brisk when I woke up in the morning and was walking around. But I mean, we won't feel like that down here for a while.
I want to get one more like non-Texas weather trip in before the season. That's either going to be Whitefish, Montana, or Nantucket, TBD. But hopefully no rain, because either one of those you're going to get, like you're talking about, just a little refresh, because we ain't getting that until about maybe late October, if not November. So
it's funny. I think I saw back when the time for the Ohio State game was picked, some Ohio State fans were like, heck yeah, it's going to be cooler because it'll be later. Like, I hate to break it to you, but it's not going to be any cooler the second weekend of September in Austin, even though the kickoff's at 7 p.m. It'll probably just be more annoying because it'll still be 95 degrees at 7 p.m.
Well, the problem with those games, as you know, and everybody listening knows, It's great to play it at night, and you want big games at night, in my opinion, every time. It was my number one disappointment of that Miami A&M game was 11 a.m. for a playoff game because of the NFL. But the thing about those night games and big games like that one, like Notre Dame a couple of years ago here in College Station, it's a big game, so you're going to start tailgating early. And every poor, miserable soul out there in burnt orange or in scarlet and gray, just like it was here a couple of years ago, when you have to sit out there and tailgate for 4+ hours before that game, you're doing that in the heat of the day. And that is absolutely miserable. Meanwhile, we'll be playing Arizona State here in College Station at 11 a.m., which sounds better than 2:30. But once it gets to about noon, yeah, let's just hope for a little bit cooler of a day that day. Not
Cross
cool.
our fingers for an earlier introduction to fall. We'll see if that happens.
Yeah, and not cool right now. As I was at a practice Saturday and felt like it was about 105 degrees. But let's start with fall camp. Do you want to kick it off, or you want me to? I don't care. We go Aggies, Longhorns. We're going to do both either way. Look, week 1 updates. Why don't you kick it off because you're on the list here first?
Yeah, so starting off, I think that one of the biggest things that people have been talking about week 1 with Texas is just that Cam Coleman video that came out.
Yeah.
And I quote tweeted it, and I want to clarify what I meant in my quote tweet, because I said, anybody talking about how this pass looked has not played competitive sports. I just want to clarify what I meant by that. Because the thing is, in practice, you want to practice good balls and you want to practice bad balls, because even from good quarterbacks, not every throw is going to be good. Even if they cut off who threw that ball, and it looked like a tipped pass to me, just the way it was going.
I would hope that was tipped.
Either way, you want to practice, like, and you didn't get Cam Coleman to catch every ball right on the numbers. That's not why he's a great wide receiver. And you want to practice the bad, you want to practice the good. And even if that was Arch throwing the ball, guess what? He's going to have bad throws in practice. Marcel Reed's going to have bad throws in practice. And I think we talked about this last year, because I think there was maybe a couple videos from Texas A&M's practice where either throw wasn't good or something like. We talked about how stupid it was. Because guess what? Like, the best players are messing up in practice. That's the point of practice. That's where you want to mess up. That's where you want to learn. That's where you want to have your bad throws.
Let me tell you something. You're right on. And I think people misinterpreted it as you thought that they'd go out to practice and have like a bad ball session where they're like, hey, we're going to throw a bunch of bad passes. You meant like you're going in a month of practice, you're going to catch good with bad. And you need work on catching underthrows, overthrows behind you, and that happened. Tip balls, yeah, for sure.
Well, I mean, even on that note, when I don't know if they do this in football, but when I played soccer, we did practice bad balls. We practiced. I remember this session intently of just balls being pelted at us and us figuring out how to head it or bring it down, or just you practice bad balls and not great passes, so you know what to do with them in a game and you don't make a detrimental mistake in a game.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what was going on here. Probably not. It was probably just a tipped ball. But even if it was a bad pass, guess what? Those happen in practice. Those are going to happen in a game. Even the greatest quarterbacks have bad passes in a game. It happens.
I've got a couple of comments.
That was the point of the video.
Yeah.
It was a great catch, just like, what was it, Terry Bussey's great catch in practice. It was a great catch, and it shows the length of Cam Coleman and just how amazing of a wide receiver. And we didn't have a wide receiver who was making those catches last year. No. So it's good to see.
So, couple comments, and I want to wrap it up. That point, because we were going to talk about him and Bussey's catch. We'll talk about the both in here right now. Then I guess number one, I don't think for me, I don't think Cam Coleman. I think he is as good as anyone in the sport, along with Jeremiah Smith and maybe Ryan Williams. Ryan Williams drops a lot of passes too. Cam Coleman and Ryan Williams both dropped a lot of passes last year. And actually, A&M's first-round draft pick, Casey Concepcion, dropped more than you'd think. His drop number was actually somewhat high last season. So it's not those catches. Cam can make those. He's going to be as sensational. That's why I think he's just a nightmare problem for teams in the red zone. And Texas has had to work. We've talked about all offseason. They got to get better inside that 10-yard line. Well, that's where he's just an impossible assignment. And if what that play showed is if Arch puts it anywhere near him, there's a great chance. What you've seen with Cam, and you saw it with KC some last year, and you definitely see it with Ryan Williams more than both of them, sometimes they drop the easy one, so it's a concentration thing. The other thing, I did watch, you made a great point about Marcel, that video last year where everyone made such a big deal. Oh, no.
Well, I mean, there's nothing else to talk about, so people are going to be critical of every little thing they
But
get.
if you're going to go on Twitter and be like that, have the common sense, just like you said. If you're watching that and you're worried about that pass, you're completely missing the point, and you're doing it on purpose, by the way. With Marcel, it was like practice, like warm up, early in practice throws, just kind of warming up the arm, lobbing it up. I didn't have time because that Notre Dame game ended so late in the night in South Bend. I wanted, and I had work to do the next day writing-wise, I wanted so bad to go through and find all those comments because Notre Dame had a great secondary last year. They had a couple of high-round draft picks. Just the commentary about how they were going to humiliate Marcel and A&M in that passing game. All Marcel Reed did a month later from that video is go into South Bend and have 400 yards of offense in beating and lighting up that defense for 40 points. So, again, just to your point, you're spot on. We've got buffoons on Twitter. And the Terry Bussey, Cam Coleman thing was great because it's just like it's rivalry time. You make a one-handed catch and post it. We do a one-handed catch and post it. And we let everybody argue about which one was better, more impressive, yada, yada, yada. And it was fun. Now, granted, your Longhorns and Cam Coleman's made the rounds today on, I think, every show I watched this morning in the country, Sports Talk, and they were calling it the catch of the year, which was mind-blowing to me because the year doesn't
catch of the
start
year.
for
Well, the year
3
hasn't
weeks.
even. I mean, I guess it can be the catch of the year because the year hasn't even started yet, and it's the coolest catch we've seen posted online. So
They were both
there you
sensational
go.
catches. We'll talk about Bussey here in a minute when we talk A&M camp. So go on. Cam Coleman,
The
obviously,
catch of the year
turning
will
heads.
be updated when season actually starts. I'm sure.
But Cam is absolutely turning heads daily, it sounds like, down in Austin.
Yeah.
And not surprisingly.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, a couple of the other obviously I can't go to practices, but just what I've sleuthed from the different reports I've read. One other big thing I've seen a lot of is commentary on Michael Masunas, the tight end from the transfer portal. One of the biggest things that he's making statements for right now is run blocking. But Michael Masunas is making a statement in run blocking, which is something that Texas desperately needed last year.
Yeah.
Was better run blocking. Obviously, the run game was pretty dismal last year.
I'll say that would be a big deal, obviously. That's what A&M's looking for, too, is improved blocking there on the perimeter to help out that run game, for sure. And if Texas gets that.
I think Texas has just been missing that bigger tight end body since Gunnar Helm moved on to the NFL. You didn't really have somebody who was making quite as many statements as him since. Hard guy to replace, big shoes to fill. In the run game category, it's looking like there's 3 guys that are running about the same reps, and that's Smothers, Raleigh Brown, and Derek Cooper, the one who, I've pointed out to you, the freshman who you have not seen play in the Michigan game.
Not my finest moment on this show.
Yeah, pretty interesting. So true freshman to watch there. And then on the O-line front, which is probably Texas fans' biggest question and A&M's fans' biggest questions for their own team going into this season. Right now, it's transfer Dylan Skiorski getting the reps at left guard, and left guard is kind of the one position that was a very soft spot for Texas last year, and probably the only one they're still working to see who's going to fill that first string role. But the early evaluations say the O-line looks completely different than it did this time last year. Just bigger, more athletic, and I think the most important thing is just more seasoned, just more cohesive, more experienced, more confident. And we've talked about confidence last episode with Arch, and confidence goes a long way. And so you have Connor Robertson or as a center, stepping up and into that role of just being the vocal leader on the O-line. And I don't think you had quite as much of a vocal leader on the O-line last year. You had Gooseby, but you really need that guy at center to be that leader.
Yeah.
So I think those are some important things to just continue to watch into fall camp.
The O-line's interesting to me. It sounds like Siani's turning heads at tackle. My question would be, I like that both Texas and A&M have experienced centers. I think that's a great place to start. You have experienced centers and you have experienced quarterbacks. I mean, give me my offense and say, okay, this is what we're going to start off with. And I'll say, okay, I'll feel a lot better if you tell me I've got experience at center and at quarterback. And they both have that. I think Robertson or if you're going to get to Seymour from Western Kentucky, if it's him, if it's, Sikorsky from, was it Oregon State?
Yes, still figuring out how to say that name.
If you're going to get them at guard and Robertson, I think he kind of like Mark Naboo, both of them were like quality, like solid centers last year, but they got to rise up. There's a reason why Trey Zune was moving to center a lot. He was really good at center when they had him in there. And then prior to that, you guys had a good one starting for about 3 years prior. So I think both centers are solid, need to be better than they were last year. And both teams are going to have new starters at guard. So when we talk about the O-line, I think for both these squads, you guys have more of an answer at tackle, obviously, with Gooseby. But I think what happens between the tackles is going to be really significant in both Austin and College Station.
And you also, to note, you get Cole Hudson back now as just an additional depth piece on the O-line, which can't hurt. Whether you agree with the standard of him coming back or not, it's now going to happen across the board for
I don't care.
a lot of teams.
Everybody's going to try to take advantage
is
of
what
it.
it is. Great to have another depth piece on the O-line in a position group that you could surely use depth in.
What else you got? And see, you got a few
I think
more
that's about it, other than just Rasheem Biles, another transfer that's really making statements, looking to be a Colin Simmons level problem, which is a big deal. If those of you who know Colin Simmons and the havoc he can wreak on a opposing offense.
I think he could. I hate to say it, and Biles could be better than Anthony Hill was a year ago. I don't think that's outlandish or out of the question.
I wouldn't hate it.
There's just so much length and range there with him and speed. I'm not saying he's this guy, but because he was I think the best. This is the best linebacker I've seen play at Texas. Whereas at A&M, man, there was a ton at A&M back when I was in school, but like stand-up inside linebacker, I'd probably go Datwin for A&M. Outside, there's about a dozen of them, but just that position for me, Biles has some like Derek Johnson to him. And that was, to me, he was the best high school linebacker I've seen at Waco High, and then probably the best stand-up linebacker I've seen at Texas. And that was in the Mac Brown era where, there was a million of them. So, anywho, you're right. Texas, with that kind of speed in the front seven, that's nightmarish for opposing offenses when you have like multiple guys like that. I think back to Ohio State last year with their defensive end outside linebacker combo that both went in the top 10, and that was obviously a nightmare for most opposing offensive lines, and especially in the case of the pass rush. So. Yeah, hopefully from where I sit, hopefully he doesn't excel to that point, or some of my predictions might not come true. And then finally, you had a comment, I guess, on Wingo. You didn't want to go without mentioning him amidst all the hype of Cam Coleman.
Yeah, he's been standing out a lot as just despite all of the hype around Cam Coleman. I think he's one that's been slightly underlooked. Like Sark said earlier on, he said he feels like some people forget that we have Ryan Wingo. And Ryan Wingo, despite some of his mistakes last year, was a very, very solid receiver. If he could clean up even half of those dropped balls, that's an insane season. That's a very, very quality receiver. So if he can fix some of those mistakes that were acknowledged, I think he has a very high ceiling.
I think people forget, like, Craver and Wingo both last year. You know, Wingo had the drops. Craver got banged up with about 3 or 4 games left, and they both still put up, like, real numbers. Like, had Wingo caught those passes
Wingo
earlier.
to, like, Worthy. Like, Xavier Worthy had a really mid-season, and then the next year just incredible.
Yeah.
So it kind of looks similar to that trajectory for me, but I think Wingo had a little bit better of a season than Worthy did when he had his rough year. I would have to look at the numbers to be sure, but just from memory.
And speaking of Worthy, it's funny because, like, to me, Craver as a player reminds me of a Worthy type. Just a small, really fast, like, ridiculously explosive. In fact, I see some mock drafts that have Craver going very late first, which is where Worthy went to the Chiefs. But I think Mario is just a little smallish. You know, he's not smallish. He is small, and I think that might cost him. I could see both those guys. Is he 5'9"? Like, is he? I mean, I could see both those guys going in, like, round 2, meaning Wingo and Craver. All right, well, A&M wise.
Yeah, 5'9", you got that right.
Yeah, and A&M wise, Terry Bussey and the wide receivers, speaking of, that to me has been the story of, you know, we're 4 practices in. We're about to go out there for practice number 5. But not surprisingly, kind of like Cam Coleman and Wingo, you knew that was going to be a strength we'd be talking about. Same thing on the A&M side. I think Terry Bussey's been sensational. I told you this. We talked about him a lot in the offseason. People didn't want to hear me because they just think a guy is who he is when he gets there. And when you see small-town Texas players that do everything and they don't really focus on any one thing, it takes them a minute to really kind of settle into their usage and how the coaches have to figure them out. They have to figure out the intricacies of the position. I said that's what you saw from Terry Bussey in the spring before he had the high ankle sprain. Now he's out there doing it. That one-handed catch wasn't even his best catch of the day. He went up over Julio Humphrey's head, picked the ball off his head. He was the best player out there on the field on Saturday. And again, that's saying something because Isaiah Horton, the Alabama transfer, has been making some sensational catches. He's that guy they lacked last year, Amanda, that big-bodied outside receiver. And he goes probably about 6'3", 220 plus. And they just didn't have that last year on the perimeter.
Let's say both Craver and Bussey are not, I mean,
they're smaller.
I don't want to say small, but like they are smaller.
Craver is small. Bussey is shorter but stockier. Bussey's kind of got that running back build where they're going to use him in a lot of different ways. He'll kind of be that Swiss Army knife, kind of like Anias Smith was a couple years ago. And then Ashton Bethel-Roman, I think he'll be the most overlooked player on the A&M offense going into the season around the SEC.
See, I disagree because I don't think he's overlooked.
You don't? It's okay. Well,
I think people recognize how good he is. That's why I disagree.
Yeah, I think that's where I just think he's going to be. I don't know what the numbers are going to look like for all of them because it's going to be spread around, but I think Bethel-Roman is like poised to take that leap up to where people go, okay, he's a high-level, high-end SEC receiver. So anyway, that's been the highlight position to me. Marcel
both
had
very depthy wide receiver rooms.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We could be talking about 1-2 in the SEC. Obviously, a couple other teams will have says in it, but I mean, you're going to have to be hard pressed.
I think any team in the SEC would be very happy with either Texas or A&M's wide receiver room.
I think you'd be hard pressed to crack that 1-2. Somebody might, but I don't know who it'll be. Secondary looks good too. I mean, these receivers are making plays. There's something different about this secondary now when you go out there, you go, okay, now I see it even more so because Dalton Brooks missed spring ball. He's a senior NFL-bound safety, third-year starter. Des Ricks, NFL-bound corner, missed spring. He'll be a third-year starter as well. And then Ricky Gibson III, the starter from Tennessee that transferred in, was out most of the spring with a high ankle. So the three of them back out there, and all of a sudden you go, okay, now I see what this starting five can look like. Now I see what this depth looks like when they start rolling in guys. So secondary has definitely jumped out at me. Marcel's been sharp early, Amanda, particularly with his deep ball. And what I like, and you've talked about accuracy a lot, and so have I. This is one of the things I don't push back on you on. And I see them, he's getting the ball out a lot quicker too. So it's not just, hey, let's work on our accuracy and get better at throwing the ball down the field. It's let's do more things quickly and in rhythm. Just bam, 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 throw it, boom, boom, and start doing other things than first option, second option, third option, back to the first option, throw. Let's get the ball out of your hands quickly and get it into the playmaker's hands. I'm seeing a little more of that.
I think my concern with Marcel wasn't really his accuracy, because I do think he's a pretty accurate quarterback, more of just decision making with putting the ball in a place. It's because, there's plenty of balls either that would have been accurate if the player wasn't double or triple covered.
He's forced some.
So I think just
especially in the red zone.
Seeing a step forward in that category, which I think is something that can be gained from experience. So you'll have to see if he makes that step.
Yeah, and so O-line competition, look, I think it's still pretty open. I've got in my head who I think ultimately will start. I like Blake Ivy as a storyline potentially at right guard. He's a third-year guy. LSU tried very hard to tamper and convince him to enter the portal, and he didn't. And I think A&M will benefit from that because I think he's got a really good chance to be one of those guys.
Who do you have set on the O-line that will be in the starting five?
You're asking me like what I think, because I don't know if there is, other than Mark Naboo at center, but I think Wilkin Formby is from Alabama is a very, in my opinion, a very safe bet to be your right tackle. And I think the rest of that competition's pretty open, because you got at left tackle Tyree Adams from LSU, and then Lamont Rogers, the second-year guy that was a high 4, low 5-star guy coming out a year ago, and was a true freshman last season. So I think that left tackle competition will be a kind of one to circle as we go through camp. And then, again, I think the guard spots are pretty contested. You've got transfers from South Carolina and LSU, and then you've got, I mentioned Ivy. Robbie Bordon's a third-year guy as well, and then you got some second-year guys, including Tyler Thomas, who's 6'4", 350. I think, or 6'6", 350, I'm sorry. Like that group right there, there's a lot of competition at guard. I think I like Ivy. I think he's ready at that spot, but if you're asking me who my safest bet is, in my opinion, it's center and right tackle. Formby.
I think that would be my biggest concern, just because that's a similar place to where Texas was in last season, which is not having a bunch of answers as to who those guys are at this point in the preseason. So that would be my biggest concern, of just you like to be seeing those players that are standing out, and this is going to be and obviously Texas still has one position that's contested, or more so contested, but it'll be interesting to see how it pans out, and if you're trying to still figure out things after game one, or if you can get something set.
I don't like that. I like a knowing. I do like knowing. And I will say this. We've talked and we've argued about a million things in this offseason, and time will tell, how it goes. But, and maybe I've been a little defensive the last couple weeks on this show, but I'll say this. And by the way, I say that because I've heard that. Now,
you were right about the O-line situation with Texas last year. So
that's what I was
pretty similar, except A&M did replace him in a different way than Texas did. So that's one big difference you have to look at.
That's the hope. The hope is that getting that experience and having experience to lean on, and then if you don't, if players are able to beat out those SEC veterans, then even better, right? Now, the question, and that you've brought up a million times, and it's true, like I said this morning, there's a reason people are looking at A&M at 8, some of these national voices, and they're kind of echoing you with the concern. Now, you said you like them at 8, but they're echoing you with the concerns and things. And
I think a lot of them are doing that too because of the offensive line, new O-line coordinator as well, with these massive changes. Not a new O-line coordinator, new offensive coordinator overall with
and the
these
new
massive
O-line.
O-line changes.
I agree.
So,
and I understand that, like, if you're going to, the reason A&M was such a trendy pick last year for a lot of these people or in the preseason, and the reason why, and they were trendy because the win-loss total was like 8 and 4. But the reason I was so bullish, and the reason the reason they succeeded, they had a ton of experience up front, and they had NFL players up front on both lines of scrimmage, and that didn't show itself against Texas or Miami. It did on defense against Miami. I mean, they held them to 1 touchdown, but that O-line was a big part of A&M's success. So I can't sit here to you and tell you that it's a guaranteed layup that they're replacing 4 NFL starters. And if this thing falls short this year, it could certainly be if the O-line underperforms. And we're not going to know the answer to that until, probably sometime around October when they've played Arizona State, Kentucky, LSU, and Arkansas. And I know the tougher end of it's after that. But by then, you'll have a feel like, is O-line an issue, or did they reload and not get caught in a rebuild? And the goal by going to the portal, Amanda, was to not get caught in that rebuild that Texas and others did, because everyone's adjusting to this portal thing where you go, yeah, let's go add 1 player in the portal. Well, I think Texas and A&M both this year said, no, screw that. Let's go add 3, 4 linemen in the portal. And that's what they both did. And then finally, for me, the defensive line depth, like particularly at tackle, I'm really impressed by the depth on the D-line. I don't know. I think DJ Hicks is a surefire NFL pick. I don't know who else is, like, as we're sitting here today. There's somebody will, and especially from the younger ranks. But I think they've got so many more, like Cole Kubelik likes to say about O-linemen, who's above the line? Who's above the line? Because that's who you can play. How many guys do you have that are above the line? And at D-tackle, I think they've got a lot more, maybe 3, 4 more guys above the line than they did a year ago when they were kind of fortunate that they didn't have many injuries there. And when Albert Regis went down against Miami, it was an absolute killer because they didn't have that many guys above the line. They've looked really good stuffing the run. And then finally, I do love what I'm seeing from the running backs, particularly just some real explosion and burst in Jamarian Morrow, the second-year back, and the 5-star freshman, KJ Edwards. There's just a different level of getting through that line, kind of like what you talk about with Rayleigh Brown and Hollywood Smothers. I see it with these two. When they get through that line of scrimmage, how quickly they're up on and past the linebackers. Once they take that handoff, explode through the wash and through the front 7 and get into that second level of the defense. And look, if A&M's going to have that running game this year, I think they need more explosives out of the backfield. And when they were at their best this past year, that's what they were doing. And they need to get back to that. And I think those 2 guys have jumped out at me.
Yeah, I think that's one of the positions where I still have question marks with A&M as far as just not. I'm still confused as to why there wasn't seem to be a need as to add a little bit more security. I'll put it that way, security in that role, just because that is an area where A&M could have probably been a little more comfortable during some games last year if they had a little bit better of a run game. But
well, now
you seem very sold on Morrow.
I'm sold on Morrow. I am. He's got to prove it over more extensive body of work than he did. He in limited action last year, but I am sold on him. I was someone that was banging the drum of like, hey, what about portal running back? But it's also, they signed Carson Baker, who we don't talk about on here. They signed Tiger Ryden from DeSoto's going into year 2. They do have a stable. It's an unproven stable. Last year they had 1, 2, 3 seniors go in Moss, E.J. Smith, and Amari Daniels. Reuben Owens, I think part of it is like, I don't know how much Smothers and Rayleigh were, my thought process is I would bet they're both 800 plus, 750 to $1 million range. And I think maybe, sometimes you look at who you got and you go, okay, is there that much of a difference that we're going to go spend that much to go and by the way, that doesn't even mean they'd get them, Just the pursuit of them might cost you a Reuben Owens. So I think they kicked the tires on a running back at Baylor who's from this area in Franklin. That was about it, though. They definitely seemed content with the stable and or just, hey, this is a fit in our, in terms of roster management, and we like what we've got, even though it's unproven.
Well, we'll have to see how that goes.
We will see. Much like a lot of these schools, everyone around the country and every team has there's a position or two for everyone that is a we will see position. And look, it's the difference a lot of times between, whether a team makes it or not or how far they can go. Because very few people can just pay. I saw an article today or the other day. It was talking about no teams anymore have no question marks and no flaws. And that's kind of what I've been saying about Texas that I think has been misconstrued when I say I think they should be in the top 5. But I think Texas and Ohio State and Oregon, like Georgia, these teams have question marks, whereas in the past, you could just hoard. If you were Nick Saban or you were Kirby Smart, you could just hoard
I don't know.
all
I
these
feel
great
like
players.
Ohio State has less question marks than they did last year. Like teams, you had its new, and same with Georgia. You had 2 new starting quarterbacks. Both of those quarterbacks returned with experience.
Yeah, I mean probably across the board though for them, like Ohio State. Defensively, they lost so.
Well, I think they've earned the right to not quite have as many question marks, considering they have both proven that they are reloaders at this point.
Oh yeah,
they don't need to rebuild.
No.
So that's why I think A&M, Texas, and OU still need to prove that they can reload and not rebuild. They need to prove consistency.
You took the words out of my mouth from last summer. That's what I wanted to see. Could Texas reload? And they fell just short. They fell a game short of that. And now the onus, I think, is actually on A&M and OU. Like, can they reload? And like you said, Georgia, Ohio State do that. But my point is to say, I don't think it's like those teams used to be. So Ohio State, did they lose at least 4 first-rounders and 3 top 10 picks?
But, they did that the year before. They had a massive class the year before. And probably before that, I'd have to look back. But they've been losing a lot of players. But that hasn't...
Oh, go ahead.
It hasn't derailed them.
No, and I don't mean derail. Here's what you're right. What you're saying is absolutely right. They're stalwarts. They're going to be there every year, regardless. And that's what Texas is trying.
Until they're not.
Until that's what Texas is trying to be. That's what Alabama is trying to get back to. That's what A&M and OU and everybody's trying to get there. Texas is,
They do have 5 new transfers starting on defense, so that could be one thing to look at. But their offense looks pretty experienced from looking at the depth chart.
I'd like to see how many returning starters Ohio State has on that O-line, because I think it was a little bit of a weakness last year. And if they could improve that, then that offense could be pretty deadly with Sayan going, like you said.
I'm not sure about starters, but they have a junior, a senior, and 1 sophomore.
Yeah,
so
I'd assume that's a pretty
older
experienced.
Players, I'm not going to act like I know which players were starting last year for Ohio State, but
I don't know their offensive line other than I know that was a unit that I thought was gettable, and that's one part of that potential matchup with A&M and Ohio State in that Cotton Bowl that kind of caught my eye, because the Aggies can get after the quarterback, and I was like, man, if you get after Sayan, and this is going to be something to watch in Austin, if you get after him, all of a sudden all those great receivers don't matter as much if your quarterback's getting inaccurate and he's getting knocked around. And that's exactly what Miami did to him. And that was my whole thing about Marcel, too. I'm like, I watched Julian Sayan, a Heisman finalist, have a really bad game against that same defense because they just get after your ass, those two defensive ends. And it'll be interesting. If Ohio State makes a big improvement on the O-line, okay, 5 portal transfers on defense, Matt Patricia will get those guys right. He's in one of the elite minds in the game. So anyway, that's my A&M stuff. We're going to move on to some SEC randomness here. Speaking of quarterbacks, just real quick, I listed something. I was just thinking about it, Amanda. And I was going to say we both do it, but then I was like, 10 games is too much. But, so many interesting, fascinating matchups for you guys this year at the quarterback position with Arch Manning. I mean, you could go Arch Marcel, you go Arch Mateer, you can go Arch Chambliss. I listed because
Arch, leave it.
Levitt, yeah.
Levitt.
If you don't quit saying leave it and make me think of Leave It to Beaver every time.
He pronounces his name wrong. It looks like it should be leave it.
Yeah, it should be no A. Okay, but the one I picked, because I said let's just pick one for each of our teams here. And I picked for Arch, the Arch Manning Julian Sam because it's going to be probably number 1 versus number 3, maybe, in week 2. In Austin at DKR at night. It's a rematch. It's 2 Heisman hopefuls. That was the one of a lot of quarterback matchups that Texas will have Arch pitted against. That's the one I circled as I think the most intriguing nationally.
Yeah. I think you could say that. You could say that Arch Chambliss.
Yeah.
That probably be between those two for me.
Yeah.
I mean, Mateer and Reed are the 2 on this list that they could either take massive steps forward or continue more of the same. And it's almost for very similar things. I think Mateer, both of them just need to get smarter with reading defenses. Mateer more so than Reed.
Yeah.
I trust Reed a little bit more than I trust Mateer. And they both have O-line questions. So very, very similar places.
Yeah.
Both have a high ceiling.
Yeah, and that's my game. That's what I circled for Marcel was the Reed Mateer because that might very well be the quarterback that plays the best that night in Norman might take their team to a playoff. Like it might be an elimination game with 1 to go. So that one I circled. You mentioned Chambliss. I did him in Levitt just because of Lane Kiffin Bowl. That's going to take place in Oxford.
That is the most. I'm glad it's not a Texas game. That is like the most anticipated game of this season. That is by far the most anticipated game of this season. And I know who you're cheering for.
Oh, man. I can promise you.
You might wear
baby
light
blue powder blue. Yeah.
Be in some powder blue that day rather than maroon.
I went out of conference with CJ Carr and Darian Mensah later in the year, November. What a battle. The rematch between Notre Dame and Miami. You talk about playoff implications there. For Notre Dame, to me, that might be for an undefeated season for them because their schedule's so soft. But Carr versus Darian Mensah, Notre Dame went portal. Miami went portal again, 3rd year in a row at quarterback. It worked out with Carson Beck. They went and got a real player who went from Tulane to Duke and now to Miami. Welcome to 2026 college football. And then finally, I put Dante Moore at Oregon. Go look at Oregon's schedule, and kind of like Arch Manning and Texas. If you look at like the starting quarterbacks in a lot of those games, it can be Oregon versus Washington. It can be Oregon versus what am I thinking here?
You got Ohio State,
Michigan, Ohio State, and a sleeper. Are you looking at their schedule?
Yeah, you got USC there too.
USC and Maivea. Okay, now let me give you. So do they? Here's a sleeper. If you're a quarterback NFL draft guy and you want to see great quarterback play, how about Oregon versus Oklahoma State early in the season? Should be a one-sided game, but Moore versus Mestermaker transferring up from North Texas, getting a huge payday to go up there to Stillwater. That's a fun one to watch early in the season. Just from watching QBs.
I'll have to see if Oklahoma State can win a single football game this year.
They will with.
I think they'll do. I have a soft spot for Oklahoma State, so wish them the best. That was pretty. I will say my sister-in-law is also a huge Oklahoma State fan, so she was pretty sad all football season last year. Got pretty dark on game days when we would go to their house and watch the game.
Well, one more football note. On3 had their All-American team. Texas had 4 first-teamers. Have you looked at it yet?
Look at this.
Well,
Let me go pull it up.
As you're pulling it up, try to guess who they are. First team All-Americans. I'll give you a hint.
Cam Coleman.
No.
Oh, Colin Simmons.
Yes.
Trevor Gooseby.
Yes.
Arch Manning.
No.
Interesting. Ryan Wingo.
No. Think defense.
Rasheem Biles.
Yep. And then one more I think would take too long because it's a trick one. It's Niblett as the return man.
Okay, yeah. Niblett,
second team was Arch and Cam.
Okay.
Arch and Cam. So 6
bad.
first and second team All-Americans. Some people, have said, I saw somebody tweet out the other day that Texas could have 7 first-round draft picks. I don't know who the seventh. I guess it's those 6 plus wing. I don't know who this. I think they're talking about Siani. They're probably talking about Siani and potentially Wingo. That would give you 6 minus Niblett. I don't think he's a first round.
I don't think that would happen, but
no.
I think definitely a couple, more than 0 first round picks.
It speaks to the talent. And look, Texas with 6, A&M with none. A&M had on the third team Craver and safety Marcus Ratcliffe. It's interesting here because I think, last year A&M had several All-Americans that were not on anyone's list, namely Cassius Howell and also Casey Concepcion. He was a star player at NC State, but he wasn't on any preseason All-American list. And they also turned a no-name tight end that Nebraska didn't even seem to care about losing into a second-round draft pick at tight end. So player development has been huge under Elko. I'm not so worried about the lack of those. I would rather have 6 than none. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't want to do what I did last week with you with what was I saying? If the 2 running backs would have been here, that was a good clip by you. But so I would love to have 6 versus none, and let's be clear. But I'm going to be fascinated to see who are those guys this year that Elko and A&M develop and turn into those all SEC, All-American caliber
It's players. Never a bad thing to, what is it, the term? Undersell and over-deliver, or whatever the term is, for people to underestimate, then over-deliver, which is what happened last year, definitely in the case of Casey Concepcion.
Absolutely. So that's where I was out there with that. And then with Texas, like, hey, you got people saying you have 7 first-round picks. I think the floor for a successful season to me is like they got to at least go. I know some people have told me, like Longhorn fans, I don't know what you thought, Amanda, but to me, like, they got to go to at least a Final Four. And I don't know if anyone cares about Atlanta anymore, but I would say get to Atlanta and reach a Final Four, because to get to Atlanta, it means you had you were in that top 5 like all season, and you finished as a top 5 team. And if you don't win it, but you still win a couple playoff games, I think that's significant. And like you said,
you got every tool you need to succeed, and barring anything tragic, injury front,
that changes everything.
Like barring an Arch Manning, something happening, or there's few excuses this year, or there's less that can be made. All right, y'all, if you're looking for a clean energy boost on game day, or honestly any day, check out Catalyst Pure Performance Energy. This stuff is built for people who want energy without the junk. We're talking 0 sugar, no artificial colors or flavors, no preservatives, and no artificial sweeteners. Catalyst gives you a steady, non-jittery stream of energy thanks to natural nootropics and the same caffeine as a cup of coffee, so you get focus and endurance without the crash. And the flavors: superberry, pomegranate power, orange dream, citrus spark, cherry lime charge, and grapefruit. All refreshing, never syrupy. So if you want to fuel your workouts, your late night study sessions, or your Saturday tailgates, grab Catalyst Pure Performance Energy at a store near you or on drinkcatalyst.com. Ignite your performance.
All right, Amanda, this is going to be some fun. I know we will vary in our predictions here, but as we start camp, I wanted to have some fun with some predictions, go 5 bold predictions. And our definition of bold, I mean, within the 5 will vary, from me to you will vary, but just 5 predictions you want to make in terms of this upcoming season, either for your team, for the Aggies, and me for the Longhorns, or SEC wide. But just give 5 bold predictions. I kind of went a little specific with some of them in terms of the A&M side.
I mainly did them based on Texas. I didn't really.
All right. Well, let's have some fun. Let's hear yours, and then we'll do mine. We'll just keep them all in a row, and we'll weigh in and have some fun with this.
This is kind of related to the comment I made earlier, but Ryan Wingo will match or exceed Cam Coleman in receiving yards this year. I think he's poised to make a step, and he's already built chemistry with Arch, and they just have to continue to improve on that. Second, Texas beats both rivals for a 3rd year straight. I see you picked the opposite.
Well, you saw me say that on Twitter too, because I got demolished on Twitter this past week, in the last week, over that clip of us with the rankings, and I don't even have any desire to go back into that debate, but I will say what my thought process was. Hey, if Texas is number 4 and A&M's 8 and OU's 9, I think they drop those. This is one of my predictions, by the way. They drop those 2 games for the first time, since being in the SEC, because like you said, they're 4-0 against the Sooners and Aggies. I think they drop those, and that's the kind of like the tie break when I was ranking those teams. They drop one of them neutral site and one of them at Kyle Field. So that is a direct contradiction of our prediction. So I know we're both hoping we win out, but I think this is the year that Texas gets to feel the worst end of the rivalry. And I do think Texas, going into the season, we talked about all those picks. We talked about Arch. I do think that we talk about trajectory. It's fine. Put them ahead, but it's only slightly ahead, in my opinion. It's not like a big gap. Same thing when you look at the rankings. It's not a big gap. I think these 3 teams are going to be highly competitive. I could see either one of our predictions coming true. And to be honest, these 3 teams might all go 1-1 against their rivals this year.
We'll see. Okay, next one. Texas has at least 1,000-yard running back and another one close to it. Yeah. Whichever one that may be.
I definitely can see that.
Which is a massive step up from last year. Mm-hmm. Defense matches or exceeds turnovers forced this year compared to last year. Last year was 16 interceptions and 7 fumbles recovered. And then last and probably
turnovers.
Boldest, Texas does not lose a home game.
Who's at home? Oh, Ohio State and Ole Miss.
I think if they drop one, it's one of those highly contested road games. LSU, A&M. I think they'll be okay in Tennessee because.
So you've got it. So let me get this straight. So another bold prediction for you would almost be like, we're going to say Texas 11-1. If they're not going to drop a home game, and that means
I said one or 2 of those road games. So either I'm leaning 11-1, 10-2. Yeah, that's what I'm leaving.
I'm leaning 10-2, 9-3 on mine for A&M. Like I'm on that cut line for both actually, but. Okay, so you're right. You're going to decide later before the season between 11-1 and 10-2. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm leaning 11-1. I'm more confident. I feel better this year than I did last year. I didn't want to make a prediction last year. I normally hate making preseason predictions, but I will because I'm just a person who doesn't like being wrong. But I will
we all
say,
get used to it. It's good. Sometimes it's okay.
3 years straight making the correct preseason prediction for Texas. And I think I predicted 8-4. Then I predicted the next season, which was 10-2, and then the next one 11-1, something like that. It was the 2nd year of Steve Sarkisian, 3rd year of Steve Sarkisian, and 4th year of Steve Sarkisian. I predicted all of them correctly. So I guess when I try, I can do it well.
You
I
did
don't know
well
what
on the picks last year too when you weren't in France, so you have a good track record here of predictions. I'm going to spew out mine now. I think the A&M defense ranks top 5 in the SEC. I think last year they were 40th overall. I think they make a big jump. That would almost kind of put you. It's kind of like saying I think they have a top 20 defense this year. So take your pick, either one of those. And I think the offense averages 35 plus a game, which is probably a bigger prediction, right? A little bit bolder considering the turnover that you and I talked about earlier, that you've been talking about the whole offseason. And
yeah,
not
I think
hating.
You played better defenses this year than you did last year. So I would say the latter is a bolder prediction.
That is accurate. Along those lines, to get there, I've got kind of like you. I've got a 1,000-yard rusher, and I've got Craver or Horton. I've got Morrow topping 1,000 with some big plays, and I think it's similar to what you're saying for Texas. I think Morrow and Owens kind of a nice 1-2 punch. Craver or Horton, I can't pick yet in my head, but I think one of them tops 1,000. Much like last year when you had Concepcion and Craver, I think this year one of Horton or Craver will top 1,000. I've got Reed, a top 3 quarterback in the. I don't know how we met. That's just for people to debate at the end of the season. Top 3 quarterback in the SEC, and cut his interceptions. What was 12 last year to 7. So an improvement, significant improvement there, and 2 top 10 wins for the quarterback. He had 2 as a freshman, or he had 1. Wigman had the other, and then had 1 this year. I think he gets 2 this year. I don't know who A&M.
So he'd have Arch's stats from last year.
Is that what he had?
Arch had 7 interceptions. Actually, did he have 3 top 10 wins? He had 3. Texas A&M, OU, Vanderbilt at the time was top 10, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I mean,
there's your bold prediction.
All right, I'm quitting the show. People were wondering when that was going to happen. Here we go. You finally.
That wasn't even that bad. I'm just pointing out those were Arch Manning's stats last year. And I'm glad you made the bold prediction of Marcel Reed having Arch Manning's stats on his year when everybody said he played horribly.
You know that the comments and the tweets and the message boards have got.
If you had only made it 6 interceptions and not 7.
You are aware that I know because you're not talking. You know that all the commentary. Like I wanted to have a good, strong show this week versus you. So let's. So far, so good. We'll take that one as you being a comedian. But yeah, it's
just pointing out a fact.
I know it's an interesting
pointing
fact.
Out a statistic for that guy that said she never follows up with any substance or whatever he said. Like I feel like funny. I'm the one who pulls the statistics up most of the time.
Yeah, it's just funny to me that people think it should be such an insult when you get the best of a debate. I'm like I want to go. Y'all are kind of like disrespecting her more than you are me by saying that they act shocked or they act like it's some.
That's being a woman in sports, Billy. Welcome to the world.
I'm not a woman in sports, but I know what you're saying. It is. It's like if you get anything good, it's like, oh, you should. You're getting. It's brutal. But your fans
you're getting beat by a girl.
Yeah, your fans on the Texas side. They sure do set their clock by it, it seems like nowadays. It's like their weekly entertainment. So I'm trying to make them not enjoy this as much this week. So there was your moment, Longhorns. Enjoy that one because it was pretty funny, I got to admit. It would be a hell of a year, though. I didn't even
look up that pre-show. I just realized that now. I was like, wait, those stats sound familiar, and I double-checked.
And 3. Yep. Okay, fine. I'll change it to 3 top 10 wins for Marcel. You know why?
So you'd still match the Arch's stats from last year because he had 3 top 10 wins.
Don't you have a knee surgery to get to?
I do have to be up at 6 a.m. So
I've got the Aggies winning 2 of 3. This is a bold prediction. At Bama, at LSU, at OU. So, like you've got Texas, handling business at home. I've got A&M being kind of road warriors, which they were last year. They lost to Texas.
I'd give you Bama and OU from those.
Yeah, I mean,
I think LSU has a chip on their shoulder.
I would take from last year.
Absolutely humiliated in having their stadium taken over last year.
And by the way, Kiffin has owned A&M, since he got to Ole Miss. He really did. So that's something that the Aggies are going to have to bust
I like
up.
LSU. I like them a little less under Lane Kiffin, I got to admit.
I agree with you. I've got A&M winning 2 of those 3, though. And if they do, by the way, they still have to go win at South Carolina, which it hadn't been a nightmare for them. They've only lost, they lost 2 in a row there before. No, they have lost 2 in a row. They hadn't lost at all prior to that, but they've lost 2 in a row. And then last year, obviously, Carolina had them on the ropes. So that one, honestly, if A&M goes 2-2 in those 4, and I'll have them winning 2 of these 3, I'm not going to change my prediction. But if they go 2-2 in those 4, then to me it's going to come down to, can the Aggies beat the Longhorns at Kyle Field? And that is my final prediction. A&M returns to the playoffs, and it is because they beat Texas at Kyle Field to finish 10-2. So go into that game at 9-2, and I've got Texas.
You've literally said that exact same statement 2 years ago, but you posted it on Twitter. That was a fun one to quote tweet after the fact.
That was a little more. I was a little more presumptuous of me then than I think it is now.
Yeah, that
from
was
the standpoint.
Very presumptuous back then.
Yeah, I think
you just underestimated Texas because they did have an easy schedule their first year in the SEC, but they showed up when it mattered.
Well, I underestimated them before the season going into the SEC.
Everybody knows that.
That was the biggest. Yeah, that was the biggest thing, and that was the biggest thing. So
you said there's no way that they're winning a Big 12 title, won a Big 12 title. There's no way they're winning an SEC the year after, winning the SEC the year after they win a Big 12 title. They did play for an SEC title and should have won it, if not for a guy named Bert Auburn, who's you are probably his biggest fan.
Thank goodness, Bert. Thank you for Bert Auburn, because I would have had a nasty double whiff on that one. But yeah, I've got
that would have been like freezing cold takes royalty. I think they printed a book with.
They sent me a book. They sent me a book, and the guy messaged me, and he said, "Hey, believe it or not, you're not in it. I promise. Would you love a copy?"
That would have made it 100%. That would have made it.
I would love a copy of that book. I get enough freezing cold takes on this show that I don't need a whole website devoted to it. If you wanted to. If you with this knee injury, and I'm not suggesting anything, you could probably sit there and clip a greatest hits that would slap.
I have a wedding to plan. I can't. I'm not doing that.
You don't have time. You have a year and a half to plan a wedding, and that book or that clip farming would get in the way of it for sure. Okay, so that's my thing. Horns beat Ohio State at home, lose to OU and A&M, get in at 9-3. OU, A&M, and one other. I don't know who. I mean, Mississippi State cause you a problem again. At Missouri, dangerous. At LSU.
I think
at
LSU
Tennessee.
Is a bigger risk than either of those.
For sure. And Florida at home. I'm with you. I think the biggest risk is.
Pretty sure Texas hosts Mississippi State and Florida.
They do. I think the bigger risk is at Knoxville and at Baton Rouge. But yeah, so I'm on. That's my bold prediction. A&M 10-2, beat Texas. OU beats Texas, and the Horns get in at 9-3. That goes along with that clip I said yesterday, or last week. So that's a little bit more of an explanation behind it, since everyone thought I was
You're being
insane.
Consistent for once.
Yeah, I tend to be consistent. I'm consistent. It doesn't mean I'm always right. I'm consistent, but maybe not with how I apply things to A&M versus Texas, I guess.
Yep, I would agree there.
Go ahead. What do we got? Moving goalposts before we wrap her up and I head over to practice.
Well, we can discuss your exchange from last week if you want. I think the biggest thing there, this was about the preseason rankings.
Yeah.
I was not aware that we were going off of 2 different standards for these preseason rankings. So that is where my confusion came from, because apparently you set 2 different prerequisites in your head for either of these lists. And I was under the assumption both lists were preseason rankings, where the teams stand going into the season.
Well,
So
what I didn't like was the Longhorn.
sometimes Billy makes his own rules and doesn't share with the class, and then follows his own rules, and then we're all confused.
Well, I didn't like the fact that it came off as where I saw multiple comments that I was getting outclassed during, like, something about that word hit me wrong. And here's the thing. As I explained it, it's not even that I changed the rules of it. If you really think about it, as we can look back, it's very plausible and it makes sense. Like, to me, let me say it one more time. I'm going to try this because I gotta redeem myself a little bit. Top 25. I think Texas deserves a top 5 ranking. I think OU and A&M are deserving of top 10 rankings. Okay, so in that top 25, when you were asking me to rank them, I went Georgia ahead of Texas, right back, side by side or whatever. Actually, I think I had Georgia right behind Texas. You're right. But I had Texas ahead of OU and A&M, but you're talking about the number 4 team versus the number 7 and 8 team, both of whom they play away from home. So I said, with that,
You can't act like the OU game is away from home. That is a split down the middle.
yeah.
Half the field's a home field, half the field's away field. It's a true neutral site.
Yeah.
And it can very easily feel like a home field in half a second if you've been to the game.
True that. But I think I had those 2 games, Red River and Texas and the Longhorns and Aggies at Kyle Field, as toss-ups. And in this instance, this season, in my head, I think Texas, the worm turns, and I think they lose the 2 toss-ups. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't be ranked ahead.
Keep on predicting that, because every year it's been wrong thus far. So,
but do you get
that prediction?
Do you get now what I'm saying by that, though? Is why I would still have
remember
Texas?
When you predicted that Tech was going to beat Texas the last year in the Big 12, and then Texas won 57-7?
Was that really the score?
I cherish when you pick against Texas in these kinds of games.
It probably
come into Austin and upset Texas, gets nailed by 50 point deficit.
Maybe we shouldn't have done a prediction. We shouldn't have done a prediction segment. But do you understand, though, now what I was doing with that, at least? Because I got ripped for it. But now do you get kind of the...
I understand what you were doing. I don't agree with doing it that way, but that's not what I was doing. So it's kind of hard to compare 2 lists if you're not doing the same thing.
I feel
basing off the same metrics.
Yeah, that's true. And anyway, I'm glad that everyone... for once, we had a situation where most people agreed with one side. That's rare. We got all the Longhorns and probably 2/3 of the Aggies to go, yeah, that didn't make sense, but it did. If you really think about it, it did.
Sure.
The fact that I'm having to explain it tells me it didn't. But
whatever helps you sleep at night.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you what's not is this. But do I have anything else this week? What do we got?
We got one retweet or delete to end us off. You had this, and I feel like you have a lot of these tweets that are, you've done a nice reverse curse on Texas for some of these, like the 7-win Sark and
never lost less than 4.
Iceberg, all of that. So this one is from November 23rd, 2021, which was right after Texas, I think, worst losing streak probably in over a decade or over multiple decades. So lost 6 games straight in 2021, just lost to West Virginia. And you posted, Texas has become Twitter you from the top down, more worried about winning social media than actual games. Hence
the Cam Coleman catch video. They won it. They won it this week. They weren't winning games back then. That was like a lot of my...
That was an ugly season. That was a very ugly season.
I was about to say, like a lot of my stuff, it was so accurate at the time.
What's crazy is that's also a season where Texas beat Texas Tech 70-35. They dropped 70 on Texas Tech, then go to lose 6 games straight.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
You nearly beat Oklahoma, number 6 ranked Oklahoma. You lose that one 55-48. and then you go on to just have the worst string of games you've had in years. I think that was just a real learning period. Yeah, that was Worthy's bad season. That was, but he still, I mean, wasn't that bad.
I think somebody had a funny tweet about me, and they were basically saying, like, you can watch the inner battle with me going on when we're doing this between logical, rational takes and then, trying to push back against you and argue with you. And it's like, when I start doing that, I'll drift off into like a worse take than I was going to otherwise make in the attempt to like win the argument or get the better clip in the debate. So I think I just need to stay focused and not let you draw me off sides, and I'll have better success. Or Amanda, maybe I can just have the Aggies go out and like rip through the first half of the season and kind of be, top 5 going into Alabama, and maybe for once in 3 years beat Texas. I'm sick and tired of that narrative too.
It is just funny you were tweeting this also when your team was having a much better season, but you're tweeting about Texas bothering you on Twitter.
I mean, that's a constant. That's a constant. And that is why I need to go back and see. Like, yeah, of course they were bothering me on Twitter. In your 6-game losing streak, it was like Texas was still chirping and yapping. And I was like, why are they doing this? They've become Twitter you. Yeah, I think the year after that, A&M went 5-7, I think it was maybe the year after that. So it came back.
Texas slightly turned it around the year, 2022. 2022, I think, was 8-4.
Yeah, and that was A&M's 5-7. That was the App State year. But yeah, I think like I just need to stay focused on, I don't know. We're doing some soul searching during this show, but you need to go get the knee done. And we'll have SEC Mike on next week. And, yeah, I'm going to go watch a little practice, drink a little maroon Kool-Aid because it's that time of year. They're serving burnt orange in Austin. They're serving the maroon version here in College Station. So I'm going to go watch practice and hopefully see some more of those little highlight reel catches that we've both been able to talk about this week.
And I'm going to go get a titanium knee.
Hey, you know what? And hopefully
see you next week with a new body part that will set off the machines at the airport.
Some hydrocodone, a new knee, and hopefully your boy CDC gets you a handicap accessible for that Ohio State game.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up there.
Oh, you really need to be there for that one. You really do.
I know.
All right. Well, we'll talk and thoughts and prayers for you in the morning, and I'll be shooting Grant a text around midday to see how you're doing, co-host.
Sounds good.
All right, Amanda. I'm Billy.
I'm Amanda.
And we are moving on.
Roll with some goalposts. Right. See you next time.
Later.